everyone. Welcome to this episode of Unraveling the Veil with your host, Yara Rose, also known as Katie Mosier from the yararose.com website. That is YARAROSE.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my podcast. I am so excited to have you here today. In episode 36, I told you all how much of a Disney child I am, how much I still love Disney to this day. And I feel like it's, I don't even know, divinely inspired that I just watched Mufasa, the Lion King, that new Disney movie that they came out with. And I have so many things that triggered in me, that brought forth in me, that I just want to talk to you about it. I'm super excited to be on here and express the different perceptions and just concepts that the movie brought out. And Lion King has been my favorite Disney movie since I can remember. I just love it. From the moment I saw it, there was just so much in it that resonated with me, whether it be the famous circle of life or the remember who you are or the you are more than what you have become. All of these different things. And as a lifetime Lion King fan, super fan, whatever you want to call it, I never in my entire life would have believed that I would watch a different movie and find within my heart a different way to perceive Scar. To me, he has always been this super destructive, evil upon evil. I mean, to be able to orchestrate the death of not only your brother, but also your nephew as heartless and without any thread of compassion. I just never would have imagined in my entire life that there would be any other way to see him besides this heartless monster, the definition of evil incarnate. Before I get any further, I want to say a couple of things. First, if you've never seen the Lion King series, if you've never seen Mufasa, the Lion King, or anything like that, this may not make any sense to you at all. If you are familiar with it, but you haven't seen the new movie, I suggest maybe putting this podcast on back burner until you've seen it, because I will probably ruin most of it. Just a disclaimer, I don't want to ruin anything for anybody. And also, because I have heard this multiple times, Katie, this is just a movie, right? I get that. I do. I understand that it's just a movie. I understand it's just a series. But the other day, I think it was a couple months ago, I was outside and I just happened to look up at the sky because, I don't know, I look at the sky a lot. Spirit sends me a lot of messages through birds and cloud formations and just different things. So I looked at the sky and I was like, this is the perfect, it's the perfect sky. This is what you expect to only see in movies, because it just feels so perfect that it feels fake. Like it feels like it's orchestrated. And I had this thought of, but isn't that kind of how movies are? They are an imitation of life. And while I understand that this whole podcast basically is going to be based off of a fictional movie that was made up by somebody or a couple of somebodies, you know, how the writing process works. But how many times are the movies that we're watching portraying different aspects of real life? And from my experience with the things that Spirit has been teaching me through various means, I mean, I have been on the ultimate Spirit life course. They have they have shown me so many different scenarios, so many different things. And sometimes I have to be very careful what I ask for, because I ask for it not realizing that the way they are going to answer it is by making me live through that experience. And sometimes that's not the most pleasant. So yes, I understand that this is a movie, but I think that the lessons and the concepts that I'm going to talk about today are pertinent to life. And at the very least, I'm putting them out there for you to contemplate or not. And if they don't resonate, that's perfectly fine. As always, if it doesn't resonate, just let it go. I believe that there's a reason that you're listening to it. I believe that there's something in here that's going to spark something in you. But if the whole entire message is just garbage to you, then let it go. Here we go. Mufasa, the Lion King movie. We are introduced to the concept of how Mufasa and his brother Scar originally met and what their life was like before they became adults. And I loved this movie. I loved so much about this movie. It showed you so many different themes, from the toxicity that gets passed on from one generation to the next to almost like this destiny that Mufasa had. He didn't ask for it. Life led him in the direction that he needed to go to become the ultimate him. There was Rafiki and his never wavering belief in his ability to meditate and believe in the visions and the dreams and the energy that he was receiving. And he followed that through without fear or despite fear, because how many times do we fear the thing that we most desire? Because our ego is terrified that it's going to put us in danger in some way. There was just so much in it, and I loved it. Even like the way that this hodgepodge group of misfits found each other and found their ways together to the promised land. It was so amazing how it brought together and showed that the unique traits of the different individuals made a better portrait in the end. Like the ability to fly helped cover the tracks. The wisdom of the monkey, despite the external environment, was able to lead them even when the situations looked dire. And then there was, the resourcefulness of Sarabi, getting him out of trouble in certain instances, and Taka and Mufasa and all of that. But the part that I really, really want to talk about today, the part that really changed my whole outlook on everything. And before I even get started on that, here's something I want to let you know about me. I am a Libra, which, back in the day used to just mean like you look up those horoscopes, which were so vague and could fit any person, anywhere, whatever. But as I am opening up more to this spiritual journey and I'm more and more interested in astrology, I'm finding that there are a lot of specific things about what I would say I thought was my identity that fit some of the attributes of being a Libra. And one of those has always been, I am so white and black. I dislike shades of gray. And it's interesting because a couple of months ago, I drew a card from Spirit and we were talking about the next stage of my evolution. And one of the things that they said I truly needed to overcome was this belief that the world is white and black and that there's either a good or a bad and there's no shades of gray. Because as they have instructed me on so many different occasions and they have shown me on so many different occasions, there are shades of gray. There are ways to perceive things that one may judge as good, and really, if looked at in a different way, one may judge as bad. And it all just depends on the perception that you're using to view whatever it is you're looking at. And as a lifelong person that has really held these values strong, I have had resistance to letting that go, because there's this part of me that's like, well, then where does it stop? How do you know how far is too far? But that's just the fear in me. That's just the fear in me, scared of any sort of change. We all know. We can all feel in our inner beings whether something is on the right path for us, is authentic, is right for us, or whether something's not. And yes, there are shades of gray, but that doesn't mean that, well, here's a perfect example. Scar has been the ultimate villain for me forever. And does watching this movie change my perception of him so much that I can look at what he did to his brother and nephew and condone that behavior? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's no reason that he ever should have felt the need to do that. There's no excuse for that. There's no way to accept that. However, I can understand, after watching this movie and after witnessing this perception, this portrayal that was illustrated why he had this burning anger and frustration and felt the need to be vindicated. I can't understand his perception. Does that make it right? No. And I think that that's the important thing for us to know. Yes, there are shades of gray, but there are things that are right. They're the things that make us feel light in our gut. They're the things that make us feel like we're overflowing with love and abundance and joy, and like the sun is shining inside of us out. And then there are the things that we do that make us feel gross inside, that make us get that sick sensation deep in our gut, that make us feel dirty, like we need a shower, that feel heavy and feel just, I don't even know, just disgusting. They just make us feel disgusting. And here's why basically I'm doing the whole podcast is because we all have the ability to be able to tell in ourselves which is which. If we connect with our higher self, if we connect with our spiritual community, we know the differences, regardless of which perceptions we're looking at. We know that there's a right and a wrong path for us. And by being in alignment, we are finding and navigating and we're creating our best selves. So does letting go of this absolute black and white threaten the person that I thought I was my entire life? Yeah, sure. But it's also opening me up to understand the world in a greater way and to release the judgment that I may have wanted to pass before and be more compassionate and understanding when people do fall, when people do make mistakes, when people don't follow the exact right path every single moment of the day. Because how often do we make mistakes? How often do we deviate just a little bit where we do something and we just get that sick feeling in our gut and we're like, ugh, that wasn't the right thing to do. I got in my ego. I was scared. I acted out of fear. I acted out of shame. I acted out of defense. Like, they threatened me and I defensively said this onto them and that's not right and I feel bad. How often do we do that? I can guarantee you that we've all done something that we're not proud of. And that ties back to the movie because, this just breaks my heart because it happens in real life all the time. It happens all the time in real life where two people want something. In the movie, it was both brothers fell in love with this girl. And the one brother told the other brother, so Taka told Mufasa that he was really interested in Sarabi and he wanted help because he knew Mufasa had more experience being around the females since that's how they were raised. And he was asking his brother for help. Now, this also happens in real life, so I'm going to tell you what happened so that way you can see in your life, has this ever happened before? Now, Mufasa had already been having feelings for Sarabi himself, but he didn't bother to share that information with his brother. Instead, he just tried to ignore his own growing feelings and gave his brother the advice he asked for. And to me, that's one of those moments that makes me cringe because if he had just been honest, they could have had an open conversation about it and they could have tried to work things out before it escalated to the point that it did, but they did not. So there's several sequences in the movie where Mufasa tries to help him look better for her and yada, 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 yada. And eventually, as often happens, the female chose Mufasa and then Taka saw that and he had the biggest betrayal he ever possibly could have imagined in his life. And it happened right before his eyes. And I don't care who you are. I feel like every single one of us has had those moments where we trusted somebody with our lives. They had our back. They'd always had our back. We trusted them with something and somehow they betrayed that trust and it hurts. Who has not been betrayed before where you feel like you have an arrow right through your heart? And as someone who deals with energy on a daily basis and understands how emotions bring us on this roller coaster, I know that if you're not in alignment and you see something like that and that happens and you're not practiced in falling back, riding the waves of the emotional storm and choosing a different path, that it is easy to succumb to the very, very, very dominant emotions of betrayal, heartbreak, wanting to lash out and get back at those that have hurt you. And I feel like with the lack of emotional support that this young lion had had in his life and the toxic parenting style that his father enlisted, it's very understandable why he reacted the way he did. And he made a big mistake. He did. He messed up in one of the worst ways ever. And he went and betrayed those who had betrayed him. In a moment of extreme betrayal, he lashed out. He went right to the outsiders who were tracking them and wanting to kill them, and he made a deal that he would bring them to Mufasa. He would mark their trail and they would be brought to the promised land, and then they could be in charge. And there was a couple times throughout the movie where him and Mufasa could have talked about what happened, and they just didn't. Taka was obviously upset. Mufasa didn't even know he had known, but he didn't. I think it's one of those things where it's not going to be a pleasant conversation, so you kind of avoid it. So when they brush you off, you're just like, okay, we'll talk to him about it later. Anyways, the end result, the outsiders get there, and then there's this huge battle, and Taka's faced with the consequences of his actions. He is literally faced with watching this really huge lion almost kill his brother. And in that moment, he needs to decide what he's going to do about it. Is he going to let his anger over the betrayal of Mufasa and Sarabi really make him be this person that ultimately ended his brother's life? Is he going to allow that hurt to rule? Or is he going to be the person that he has always wanted to be? And ultimately, he makes the what I would consider the right decision. He saves Mufasa twice after the betrayal, y'all. Twice. Not once, but twice. Did he cause the reason that Mufasa's life was in trouble? Yes. But in the end, did he save his life? Did he help him get back on even keel where that threat was eliminated? Yes, he did help, and he saved his life. So here's the part that really stuck in my claw. And this is the reason I'm talking about the movie to you today. Taka made a huge mistake. No doubt. No one can argue that. He did. He messed up. And trust is not built in a day. And once trust has been broken in such a huge way, it is very difficult to build back. I think we can all agree on that. But what happens at the end of this movie, and I get it's a movie and they have a set storyline that they have to follow through with because Scar ended up becoming this villain who orchestrated the death of his brother and the attempted assassination of his nephew. I understand that. But I'm talking to you today about it because this type of situation does happen in the real world. And unfortunately, it can also have forever in this lifetime lasting impacts. And I'm hoping to shed light on areas where we get to choose how we let that define us, how we let situations like this define us. So they're at this impasse where Taka made this really huge betrayal, but so did Mufasa. Were they equal? Probably not, because Mufasa's wasn't life-threatening, but they were both betrayals, and they had an opportunity to clear the air and talk about them, and they didn't. They never even tried to broach that subject of either one. They both lived in their hearts with this anger towards each other and the betrayal. And, in the end, Mufasa's like, you have a spot here. I will never kick you out, but I will never call you Taka again because that version of my brother is gone to me forever. And I feel like when we are faced with a situation that hurts us so deeply, we are definitely given an option of choosing to let that hurt change who we are forever, or whether we want to work on that and try to heal that and create a new foundation with the person that hurt us. And sometimes it's not possible to create a new foundation with those that have hurt us. Sometimes the betrayal is just so great that you can't. But I feel like in order for you to heal and move on with your life, you have to do some internal examination. You have to look at, how did I play play into the situation that happened? What was my part? How can I change that? How can I shift that? How can I work on that so that way when I go into new situations, I don't bring that energy with me? It's a learning experience for everyone involved. We all have roles in what happened, and we can all use it to learn and grow and become a stronger, more resilient person, sometimes even a more compassionate person. Now, that is always easier said than done. I have been faced with multiple times to move forward or show up differently with people that have hurt me. And there's certain times where you're just not ready. You're just not in the state where your heart is ready to even examine it. You need some time to heal. I mean, the movie ended with that day, basically. So was there time for Mufasa to even start that self-analysis? No. But in the way that Lion King opened up, you can tell that they never even bothered to try to repair their relationship. They never even bothered to have those conversations. Mufasa called him Scar moving forward, which Taka asked to be called Scar because Mufasa said he refused to call him that name, his original name anymore. He couldn't. So then in a moment of complete and utter grief, I would say just disappointment in himself and devastation that he almost killed his brother, he offered up the name Scar. Sure, if you don't want to call me that, call me Scar, so I will never forget the mistakes I made. But if you're constantly being called by your mistake, if I forgot to submit a payroll or something and someone called me payroll for the rest of my life, that's not allowing me the ability to heal. That's constantly throwing my one mistake in my face. And I don't care who you are, we have all made mistakes. And if you're anything like me, your own mind throws those mistakes in your face plenty. And we don't need external people throwing our mistakes in our face because we are well aware that we are imperfect human beings. We are well aware that we fall victim to our ego sometimes, our shame sometimes, our patterns sometimes, and we acted in ways that we are not proud of sometimes, and we're working on that, and we don't need that constantly being thrown in our face. And that's what happened to this lion. In a moment of weakness, he made a huge mistake. He realized before it was too late and acted in a way that was honorable. Yet for the rest of his days, he was reminded of that mistake, treated as subpar, and never given equal status for the rest of his days, y'all. I can understand why he had so much anger, why he had so much evilness built up in him. He had no outlet. He had no support system. He had no one willing to extend him any love or grace or forgiveness for a mistake that he made while in an emotional storm. He had nothing. And it's very ironic because in Lion King 2, there's this point where Simba brings Kovu to the spot that Scar had been in charge of while he was still there, and it hadn't healed yet. It was just covered in, burn mark. And Simba tells him, direct line from the movie, while he's showing him this barren landscape. And he says, Scar couldn't let go of his hate, and in the end, it destroyed him. Scar couldn't let go of his hate, and in the end, it destroyed him. How can you let go of something when no one gives you a chance? When the very name they call you by reminds you of a mistake that you made, yet there is no relief? Is it truly entirely Scar's fault? Yeah, I mean, he did it. He killed his brother. He wanted to kill the nephew. But there were so many things leading up to that. There are so many things leading up to it where someone could have just given him some grace. Someone could have just given him some love, and no one did. Now, there's a way that you could look at it and say, well, Mufasa gave him grace because Mufasa let him stay in the Pride Lands. Mufasa could have banned him. And that's true. But how much grace is it really when you know that you are keeping someone there, allowing them to continue to be subpar by treating them like an outsider in their own home? I feel like that's just as devastating, if not more hurtful, than banning them and allowing them the opportunity to go somewhere else and start fresh. I know, it's a movie, and I shouldn't get so wrapped up in it. But it's just like, I see it in the world. I see it where it's like you get so caught up in something and you get in this argument about it, and your pride keeps you from fixing whatever it is. And then we have this problem where we don't live forever and we never know when that person that we're fighting with is going to pass. And then they pass away and we live with this burden and this guilt and this grief that we never again talk to them. We didn't work out whatever that issue was because we thought we had time, because we were too prideful, because of this, that, and whatever. And then now we're living our life with this guilt and this burden, and it's just so unnecessary. I've shared this before, but when my maternal grandmother died, I talked to her a couple hours before she died, and I got cut off because my mom picked up the phone and it was her birthday. So my grandma was wishing her a happy birthday, and I didn't tell her I loved her. And I lived with that regret of not just saying, "Hey, Grandma, I love you. I'll talk to you later," for years. For years, I lived with that. And I felt like, man, if I could redo that phone call, if I could just tell her one more time I loved her, because you just never know when they're going to be here and when they're not going to be here. And this isn't me telling you that as soon as someone hurts you, you have to make amends. I think it's just me telling you that I hope that you get to a point in your life where you can evolve enough that when someone hurts you, you don't necessarily cut them out of your life forever right away, that you step back from the emotional storm that's rising in you as soon as the betrayal happens, and you really sit with how you want to proceed in life. And whether or not you forgive that person for whatever they did is kind of beside the point, because either way, my wish for you is that you find a way to heal your heart from that betrayal and move on, so that way you can continue living your best life. Because it's very difficult for you to live your best life when you're carrying around a wound from previous betrayals. It's very hard for you to be open to that next love interest if you're still carrying around this terrible divorce and cheating that this spouse did to you before. How are you going to be able to move forward with a new person without doubting them, without wondering who they're talking to when they're not talking to you, without wanting to go through their phone and see who they've been texting all day? You have to heal from all of your betrayals. And that's not to say that everyone that betrays you deserves your forgiveness in the way that you should let bygones be bygones. But it does mean that you have to examine your feelings around it. And something I've found to be very therapeutic is writing them a letter. And you don't have to send it. In fact, I very rarely send letters to people that have hurt me. But I sit down in a state of, after usually around a state of like reflection and meditation-ish time frames, and I write them a letter about how they hurt me, how much what they did impacted me, how I feel about it. And I just pour my heart out, and I try to figure out how I'm going to heal from whatever this is. And then I typically burn the letter, because I feel like that transmutes the pain. That lets me get it out of me. And by burning it, I free it back into the universe to be sent out as love to that person, to the person I was when I was hurt, so that we can both heal from whatever happened and move forward in our lives without carrying that baggage around. And that's what I want for you. And I wanted this podcast just to give you the opportunity to see how situations like these happen. And it's up to you how you want to handle them. It's up to you how you're going to carry them. It's up to you how to respond. But there are so many different ways that this could have been prevented, that this could have, and how often do you say that too? There's this huge tragedy that happens and people are like, well, we had no idea. But now that we see it, there were this red flag and there were these red flags and there were these red flags. Just pay attention to your intuition more, be aware of how you're feeling around people and situations, and check in with yourself. Why is it when I've been around so-and-so lately do I feel like this? Maybe your intuition's telling you something. Maybe they're telling you something's not quite right. Maybe they're telling you that there's something here that needs to be looked into more. Maybe you should be a little bit less trusting of this person. That's why I created Unraveling the Veil, because I want you all to have the opportunity to live your best lives. And this situation, these type of situations are part of our lives. Every single one of us has been hurt somehow. Every single one of us is carrying around baggage. And it's up to us to decide how we're going to heal, how we're going to move forward. And I want you all to be so in touch with yourself, so in touch with your intuition, so in, openness to how spirit can help you move forward, that you can catch these things before it's too late, that you don't reach the end of your day and wish that you had done this more and wish that you had done that more. Or, always look back and be like, well, I just regret not doing this. Now I know that my grandma heard me all the time. She's heard me tell her I love her probably 1,000 times since that day. And I sat there and carried this burden of grief and guilt and sadness that I hadn't told her. And here she'd been hearing me this whole time. All of that time I wasted, all of that weight I carried around that was so unnecessary. I'm so grateful that I know now that they can still hear us. I'm so grateful that I have opened my life up to all of this. And those people that I couldn't forgive at the time, I've done a lot of healing, and I have, either through the letters or actual communications with them, I've grown so much. And we're not friends, but I feel really good about how we closed the chapter on things. And it didn't happen right away. It took me a couple years to do some internal healing and, going of this and whatever. But I'm grateful. I'm very grateful to be where I am now. I'm very grateful for the process that Spirit's led me on. I'm so excited about my future. I'm just happy about all the work that I'm doing. And I really hope that I can inspire some of you to continue doing this stuff for yourself as well, because it's so worth it every single time. All right, I am going to stop mumbling on and on and on about a Disney movie and series of sequences. But I did ask Spirit for one message to end the podcast episode on and kind of wrap it up. What would be the cherry on top of this podcast episode? What would be that cherry on top? And they directed me to my Oracle of the Unicorns deck by Cordelia Brabs. And I'm not surprised at all by the card that they gave, because they threw out the trust card, which is about leaping into the unknown, having faith and moving forward, and believing that you will fly. And I'm going to read the whole guidebook page about this trust, because I feel like there's probably something in here you all need to hear. Your soul is calling on you to take a courageous leap of faith and launch into the unknown. You know deep down that you cannot stay where you are, doing the same things in the same way any longer. You know it is time for change. It is time to get out of your comfort zone, to expand and to explore. Yet a part of you is hesitating. You feel as if you are on the edge of a cliff, not fully believing that when you take the leap, your wings will appear and you will soar. You may be putting off what you know you need to do. You may be avoiding things that scare you and making excuses to stay in your comfort zone. This winged horse wants you to know that she is here to support you, and it is safe for you to make this change. She reminds you that you have free will and can make this choice. You can give in to fear, stay where you are, and never find out what else is out there for you. Or you can have the courage and faith to take a risk. It is time to choose your dreams. Allow yourself to get excited about leaping into the unknown. Let go of control and choose a life of surprise. It is time to throw caution to the wind, to be courageous and trust. When you are brave and take a leap, your wings will appear and you will soar. I hope this helps you guys today. I enjoyed talking to you so much, and I love you and wish you all the best. Thank you.
I love you all, and I wish you the most love, light, and inspiration. With all of my love, Yara Rose.